So listen, thank you for having me today. And as said, Ollie said, just wanted to come and talk about some of the work we're doing, some of the clients, some of the case studies, and some of the areas where we've helped, and things that businesses should be thinking about, or maybe talking about with contacts or clients or whatever it may be. So who am I? This is my mum's favourite slide. Basically, I'm the CEO of multidisciplinary outsourcing practice, Factotum. I'm an accountant, have been for many years, don't normally admit it to people anymore, so because they don't really want to talk to me. I think I said that to people recently. And I don't look it, but I've been around 30 years in the industry, working as a CFO across multiple sectors, and also within the accounting profession. Built the first outsourcing practice in the accounting profession before I sold it to Assets in 2017 to set up Factotum in 2020. I was also the former founding member of the Abacus Worldwide international network of accountants and lawyers, and do a lot of talking generally, basically, but talk to the press and write for the press and judge the fashion awards and the accounting awards. And latterly, I've been working with a really interesting charitable project, Remake, which works with formerly incarcerated people, and do a bit on social media. And my love on the weekend is I've got my pilot's license, so if I'm not talking on here or doing some work, I end up flying over the UK and all sorts of places in a little plane. All over the place. You'll probably hear me buzzing over, and I think someone on here lives quite near to me, so would probably hear me flying over her house quite regularly. So that's me. Who are Factotum? So Factotum was basically, in a nutshell, set up to be the first truly multidisciplinary outsourcing practice. So what we wanted to do was allow business owners to focus on what they do best, and the bits they didn't want to do, we could basically pick up and pick up from. So what we do is provide services that are flexible, efficient, scalable within a business, and allows it to grow with the business as the relationship does. So it's a completely flexible, scalable service. And the areas that we provide in the main are accounting, tax, payroll, and bookkeeping, which is my background, advisory services. We do some data analytics work. We've got a B leader in-house who's doing a lot of B Corp conversions and ESG reporting and sustainability reporting to clients. We've got an IT managed services team and a digital transformation team, along with a very experienced marketing team. We've also got a very strong HR division, so we help with all the people aspects of running a business. And on the talent acquisition side, we're building some, we're hiring at a very senior level in headhunting, but we're also building teams and doing sort of search and selection. So we've hired a product manager into a toy company and a CEO into a biotech company in the last few months. So in a nutshell, we look at all the back office services that a business needs and say to them, okay, where are your gaps? What do you need support in, and how can we help? So what does this mean for businesses that are starting or scaling up in the UK at the moment, and what should they be thinking about? And when Ollie asked me to speak, I was sitting there thinking, well, what is the issues and what's going on at the moment, and what should business owners be thinking about? So it's a few things that we've been talking about internally as a team. And one of them, and I think we were talking about it when we first came on, Ollie, was that we believe there's never actually been a better time than now to start or grow a business. There's opportunities, there's real opportunities out there. And I think those people that have survived COVID, Brexit, and the continued uncertainty that's going around, with these big changes, there are opportunities out there. So it's about how do we take advantage of those opportunities and harness them and move forward. But again, as with any period in time, there's always negativity. And despite the negativity, for a really good business with a strong plan, there's always going to be funding available and people to hire. The challenges where I see when business owners come to me and say to me that my biggest two challenges are getting funding and growing it, and also finding the people and building the team. Well, actually, for a good business with a very strong plan, that's not the case. You know, if you can sell your business and explain what you want, then those people will be available. You know, we went post COVID from 1 to 35 people in 9 months. And everyone was telling me you couldn't find people. So I think for the right business, there's always opportunities. So what are our tips? The three top tips that we're sort of discussing with all of our clients, all of our meetings. First one, being adaptable. So it's being flexible as a business, being able to turn your fixed costs into variable costs, and keeping very adaptable to changing circumstances. And this can be everything from your office space to the team. So can you build flexibility into that business? Do you need to sign a 5 or 10 year lease if you're going to grow quickly, when you can use serviced office space? Maybe more expensive in the short term, but builds flexibility and adaptability into your business model. Second one is to watch. watch what's going on in the sector and watch what's going on in industry. So don't be a floating island. Make sure you're identifying opportunities that are happening in that marketplace, either internally or externally. Look at business intelligence, do your research, come to meetings like this and join groups like this, which are able to give you those sorts of tips on what's happening and how to see what's happening in the wider community. And again, you've got to be able to pivot. For example, if there's a weak currency, I had lots of clients telling me that years ago they were suffering their business because the pound was weakening. But we then discussed with them the opportunity that presented to be more attractive to international customers. You know, people buy British businesses because their quality, their experience, and what we can deliver. But previously may have been quite expensive. But when the currency is weaker, to a US business that's trading in dollars, we're cheaper than we were 4 or 5 years ago. We're probably 20–30% cheaper as a service provider. So actually think about the opportunities that certain issues may throw up and look at pivoting your model. And planning is absolutely key. Again, I sit down with many businesses. I was with one yesterday. It's a lingerie business that we work with that's looking to grow their company and build their business. And the starting point is always, where do you want to end up? Where do you want to be? Do you want to be in this business for 20 years, running it as a lifestyle business and be in it, working in it? Or do you want to sell it in 5 years? What is that plan for the business? Because there's very, very different strategies and a very different business plan that gets built depending on where you want to end up. So we always kind of say, where do you want to be? And then work backwards from there, but constantly review and update where you're at and where you want to be within your life cycle of the business, so that you can make sure that what you're doing gets you to where you want to be. So it's important to always think, why am I doing this? Where do I want to end up? I used to talk about the 3 C's, then it became the 5 C's. And when I used to give these sort of presentations, I used to ask the audience to tell me what the 3 C's were, and that went horribly wrong. So I stopped doing that. And now I just say what they are. I got some really interesting responses. Again, as we're going along, if anything pops up or any questions, please just fire them away. So I'm just not a talking bald head. The 3 C's that we're going to talk about today are first one being cash. So any business, whether it's starting up, scaling up, growing up, we've all heard the saying that cash is king. Well, it really is. And I've worked with businesses of all shapes and sizes over the last 30 years. And the fundamental principle that people get wrong time and time again is the difference between profit and cash, and having cash within that business. You know, I've seen some incredibly profitable businesses that are throwing off huge margins and huge profits, but because they weren't managing cash properly, they went out of business. And also when businesses are going through a fundraise or starting up or putting their plan together or scaling up, the cash requirement is always underestimated. I've never, ever seen anyone completely overestimate the cash that they need. It's always been underestimated in every term, because things end up costing more. There's certain things that get forgotten, and it's really important to put together that cash plan that shows you exactly what you need. And that means managing working capital at both ends. That's making your customers pay on time and looking at how your customers are paying you. It's when you're paying your suppliers. It's looking at all ends of that working capital cycle to make sure that you can maximize that cash within the business. Second C is the costs, and I touched on it before. Try and turn as many of those fixed costs into variable costs as possible. So, you know, if you're sitting there with an office space that's costing you £2,000, £3,000, £4,000 a month, you might be able to make that flexible. I'm working with a business that's buying itself out of a public company at the moment, and they've currently got an office for 15 people, but they're going to take a serviced office for 6 people and work more flexibly, have people in on different days, and just have a 6-person serviced office desk, as serviced office, as opposed to a big lease, which is going to put a huge amount into their bottom line and help them as they spin out of this public company. And the other area is obviously look at all the costs, everything from your direct cost of inputs, if you're manufacturing, to your hosting cost, to everything. There's an opportunity there to look at really maximizing the profitability within the business. And you can have the biggest top line. I've worked with a company that had a 30–40 million top line that was making less profit than a business that was turning over £300,000. So again, you've got to look at how you maximize the profitability within a business. And on the cost side of things, also, it's remember, you know, it's been said before, but you get what you pay for. Sometimes the cheapest option isn't always the best, and in the long run can cost you money. So make sure you're getting what you need, and don't be afraid to pay for the services to get the right service you need that's going to build the quality within your business offering. The last one is my last C today, is control. I think it's absolutely critical that you are managing your business, and it's not the other way around. you've got to have a plan in place. You've got to have a resource plan in place. So, I've worked with media companies or any company really, where someone wins a new contract and the first thing the contract manager says, I haven't got any people, I need 5 more people to service this contract. So I need to hire 6 more people into this marketing agency. So make sure you are looking at your resource planning, looking at your people, looking at what you need to deliver the services, and don't knee-jerk and hire a whole load of people just because you win some business. And that last point, no surprises. Georgie and I were in a meeting yesterday, I think it was, talking about that. And they, it was an American law firm we were talking to, and they had this acronym that they used, which was, TIPS, TIPS, and it was for using certain areas. And I gave him another one. I ended up calling it SPITS, which he didn't like, so we called it something else. But S came for no surprises, and that is both sides of the business. If you've got customers, they don't want surprises from you. So unexpected bills, unexpected delays, unexpected issues. So you've got to keep on top of your clients and communicate with them. And on the flip side, if you have investors, you're raising funding, you're working with a bank, they don't like surprises either. So it's really important to have a proper plan, a business plan, cash flow forecast, P&L forecast. And if you think problems are coming down the line, don't bury your head in the sand, face them head on, and make sure that there's no surprises and you're in control of that business. Because as you go down that journey, and if you want to raise more money and build your business out as you grow, people want to see that you're in control of that business. So there's my 3 C's for today. There are a couple more, but that's for a longer session, and I might ask people to guess them. I threw this in today because I thought it was quite interesting. So I did a talk to a number of business owners about how to work with the next generation of entrepreneurs and next generation of customers. So the Gen Z effect. And one thing that came up that was apparent in all of my research was that it's absolutely important. And Wayne Gretzky, not the most famous businessman, but a very famous ice hockey player, if you didn't know, but he said that you need to skate to where the puck will be, not where it's been. And that held very true for ice hockey, but it's also true in business. You've got to think where your customers are going to be, where you're going to communicate with them, how to communicate with them, and not think historically where they've been, because things are changing all the time and things are moving progressively. So it's really important to think that where you are going to position your business is where your customers are, where the right suppliers are, where you're going to be. So that was a quote that was resonated with me, and I kind of wheel it out every time I talk now, but it's still very useful. And this slide as well, I think, was really interesting about the type of communication, how to communicate with customers, how to communicate internally. I think there's a really important aspect of running a business and communicating within a business, where people tend to forget that you can communicate outside with PR, with marketing, with social media, with everything that comes with it. But a lot of people forget the internal communications as well with their own team and keeping things going. And I'm going to come on to that a bit in a minute. But how to communicate is really important. So using Wayne Gretzky, match how people communicate. I was with a business yesterday that was trying to work with mothers that had children and were looking to get back into work or looking back to get fit. And we said, look, there's absolutely no point you sticking loads of money behind LinkedIn communications and LinkedIn work if that's not where your customer's going to be. So you've got to think where your customers are and match how you communicate with them where they're going to be found again. Get to the point, don't waste time, don't send long rambling emails. People don't read them. The attention span of a Gen Z, Gen X, millennial is a lot less than it was 20, 30 years ago. So if you don't get to the point quickly, they're going to lose interest. And that's in all of your communications, whether it's communicating with a customer, whether it's communicating with your suppliers, whether it's communicating with anyone to do with your business, get to the point. And again, throwing in my S again, no surprises, be transparent. People want to know clearly what the situation is, want to know what you're trying to communicate, and be very honest, open and transparent. And honesty is absolutely critical as well. And one thing that we've been very sort of hot on in Factotum is we kind of describe ourselves as the translators of certain areas. So, for example, we've got an outsourced general counsel division where we work with clients where they're trying to create shareholders agreements or legal contracts or things that are happening on a legal perspective. And sometimes, I hope there's no lawyers on the call, but sometimes lawyers tend to make things quite complicated. Business owners like, I just don't know what you're talking about. So we've got someone who actually sits as the air traffic controller and the facilitator between the lawyer and the client to explain what those terms mean and trying to get rid of the jargon and make it putting things in terms that people can understand. And don't try and be clever, because sometimes people just want you to get to the point and explain how you can help them, because if you'll all know as entrepreneurs and business owners that time's really precious, and if you don't get to the point and you're just trying to show how clever you are rather than showing how you can help that client, it won't work. As Ollie said, I've got Georgie, my colleague, on the line here, who's works in the business development team with us, and thought it'd be just useful to just throw a couple of points out on business development, because one thing we've been very hot on in the business is marrying up old style business development with modern day business development. So there's sort of two areas. You've got the online business development, which is how you're going to generate leads online. If you're a tech business, it's how you're going to generate the leads and getting the people through the business. But again, don't waste money on certain areas of online BD if you don't have a plan and are focused and know exactly what you're trying to achieve, because you can go and have the best the best plan for online engagement and online lead generation. But if you're not targeting the right people and it's not what you want and it's not focused, it can turn into the biggest waste of money. So be very targeted in terms of where your online marketing is going. Offline, again, old-fashioned networking is still incredibly powerful. Georgie will happily talk about that. And if you follow her on LinkedIn, she's one of the, I think, the busiest business development people I've ever seen. And her LinkedIn is, by the end of the week, I'm exhausted just following her, but old-fashioned networking is incredibly powerful and allows you to build your brand ambassadors and people that are going to go out into that marketplace and talk about your business. And try not to sell. Nobody really reacts that well to a hard sell. It's about building relationships and adapting your methods for what a business needs. So just to give you a couple of very quick case studies, how we've helped businesses. JLP was a mortgage broker business, and they came to us. He was setting up his own business and basically said, look, I've got to set up my company and I need a website, I need branding, I need IT, I need some laptops, I need my IT set up how it should be set up, I need the company set up, I need some staff contract, employment contract. And he said, I can go to 5 different suppliers and talk to 5 different people, have 5 different conversations, or I give it all to you and you do the whole lot. It's more cost effective, it's more efficient, and I only have to talk to one person who manages the whole process for me. So he was someone that was needed to spin up very quickly and focus on his clients. His website and everything had to meet FCA guidelines and deadlines, and we had to literally pick it all up and get him going from the start. And it just made it very efficient that we could help as his startup and plug and play all the areas that he needed. And one thing about our business model is we're completely flexible ourselves. So there's no notice periods, minimum term contracts, long-term tie-ins. It's completely flexible. Another example was Sirens, which is a fashion brand. They were growing quickly and wanted to expand their business. So we helped set up their accounting system. We gave them the advisory work, and also they were buying from China. So we were dealing with currency fluctuations and how to hedge the currency. And also we were making sure they were not falling foul of the new VAT legislation, how to transfer their product from China into the UK. And in fact, they wanted to change factory at one point. And given my background in the fashion sector, we were able to help find them factories in Turkey to move to and change their manufacturing and supply chain. So this was an example where it was 2 very incredibly bright and talented ladies who had built a brand, and we were there in the background supporting them to help build that brand and scale it into as it went. Last one is Sassoon, a brand you probably know, and ironically, I'm actually sitting in their offices today. But Sassoon is we started working with them on payroll, and then gradually took over their accounting department. So we now run their accounts department globally in the US, UK, and Germany. From there, we took over accounting and year end for them. Then we took over advisory work, took over their HR department, and we've helped them build now the largest tuition academy in the world. It's a 12,000 square foot site in Greek Street, which they opened last year, and it's now going to be one of the biggest academies in the world. But we helped them from just doing their payroll to begin with, to help them expand, to help them run their operations internationally, and also put their systems in to make them work really well. So we've worked with businesses that of all shapes and sizes that are a very small startup. I've got a business coach who turns over a small amount of money, and we do his personal tax return, through to a monthly payroll for a company with 3 people on it, through to a global outsourcing apply for a global brand. And then along the way, as businesses have started up and scaled up, we've been able to help them in every way, from building their teams to providing management of people to doing their bookkeeping and VAT returns. So I've put up there, some of you I've already connected with, but that's the QR codes for Georgie and I. So if you want to grab your phone and get your camera up and point it at the QR code, you can connect with us on LinkedIn if you haven't done already. And then that's my pretty good time, 20-minute slot. So I thought I'd leave 5 minutes for questions if anyone had anything or had any questions on anything we covered. Wanted to talk to Georgie about effective networking and generating leads and clients, or just burning questions.
Thanks very much for that. It's been very, very useful, particularly around the case studies at the end. Any questions from the stand-up community here today? Any points? What's in the chat? Gideon.
Sorry, I was on my phone. Every time I went near the mute button, my phone screen disappeared. Thank you very much. That was really interesting. Really, lots of value in there. So I'm definitely taking stuff away. From someone who also works with founders, I just, the question is like, how do you get around the barrier that I don't know if you find this as well, but a lot of founders seem to want to do everything themselves, and you know, they want to sort of have. I think partly because they enjoy learning new skills, but partly it's maybe about controlling everything and making sure they've got kind of eyes on everything that's going. Is that something you've encountered?
Yeah, regularly. I'm the worst culprit myself. You know, my team had to take my advice like grip off of things and stop me doing things when we started the business. But it's not a bad thing, because I think it's absolutely vital that the founder does know what's going on within the business and has control of the numbers. And, you know, when you're starting a business, it's scary, because, you know, it can work really well. Things, you know, and it kind of follows the same path, as it kind of goes off like a rocket, because you think, why haven't I done this before? Then it kind of plateaus a bit and everyone thinks, oh, okay, we've got a problem here. And then you push on and grow again. And everyone follows that same kind of trend. But I think it is important that you know everything that's going on in the business and how to do it, and what's working and what's not working. But with that said, you know, there are things within a business, and I think I said early on, you know, we try and make the business owners focus on the bits that they're really good at. And I give a really interesting analogy. Ironically, I do a lot in hair. Funny, I used to write a fortnightly column for Salon Business, and they put a picture of this bald guy in there, which was really quite amusing every 2 weeks, and they think it was some kind of joke. But one of the top hairdressers used to run this salon, and I helped him open a salon in central London. And he came into me after about 6 months. He said, look, I'm a bit embarrassed. He said, because every month we sit there and go through my numbers and my forecasts and you know, my cash flow and what I'm doing. And I'm a bit embarrassed because I don't know how to put this together and don't know how to understand this and really, you know, translate what's going on in my business. And I said to him, look, I'm going to come down to your salon on Wednesday, and you're going to put me in front of your best client, and you're going to give me your color palette and your scissors, and I'm going to cut and color their hair. And he looked horrified, like, you know, drained of color. And he said to me, I'm not letting you anywhere near them. I said, well, you stay away from my balance sheet. I said, look, you're trained to cut hair, right? And I'm trained to do this. I said, and the reason you're using me is because I can sit there with you once a month or once a quarter and translate the numbers and tell you where the issues are and what you need to be scared of. He said, I wouldn't know if I was mixing the colors wrong and making someone's hair go orange. I said, so, you know, there are things that people need to do. There's things that people are trained to do. And sometimes it's really good that they have a grip on it, but sometimes the business starts growing and they need to stop doing things on the back of a envelope now, and they need to get more sophisticated. And as they want to grow and scale the business, the only way to do it is for them to focus on the bits that they really do well and pass it over. So there's nothing to stop a business owner getting involved, and you know, it should be actively encouraged. But I think as they grow they do need to start taking a step back. And it's that point where you go from kind of the founder and the person that's doing absolutely everything to taking a step back and empowering your team to build the business, because you're never going to build a business if it's, or sell it for any real value if it's totally reliant on the founder. So it goes back to my, where do you want to end up in 3 years? So do you want to end up selling it in 3 years? Because if you are going to sell it, you need to make sure that that business stands on its own 2 feet if you're not there, because that's where the value is, not if it's completely reliant on that founder. So that's important. But I suppose for our purposes, when we set up, so using my example of the mortgage broker, you know, he had to get things in place when he set up a business. He needed a brand, he needed a website, he needed an employment contract, he needed terms and conditions, he needed his accounting set up. So everyone needs these bits done. And they're bits that you'd have to go to outside providers for. And previously they're talking to 5 or 6 providers, and then they're saying, well, can you just do all of that for me so I can just get on with building the business quicker? So I think it is a challenge, but it's not one that should be discouraged, but sometimes you've got to move them aside at the right point.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.